Hello and welcome to the 46th edition of the GreenWave podcast by Synergy International. I'm SYNI, your host, and today's topic is not the COP30 meeting that starts today in Belém, Brazil. Instead of yet another COP30 preview, we're headed right into the heart of the real sustainable energy debate, starting with an explanation of the one chart you need during COP30 week, the classic Sankey energy use diagram. If you're not familiar with the Sankey, never fear, you will be by the end of this pod, and you'll know how it reveals that clean energy answers a far larger share of real energy needs than understood by the vast majority of the pessimists who have cast a negative vibe shift over this year's COP. Yes, you'll leave with a clear way to read an energy flow chart and a simple correction that aligns it with what households, firms and cities consume. There is ample proof as the method comes straight from decades of work by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and from the engineering practice behind heat pumps and electric drivetrains. We'll build for you an audio picture of a corrected Sankey where a quiet arrow of ambient heat steps into view, where the right side of the chart rises without bloating the left, and where policy targets finally match the services people need. If your inbox is anything like ours, the previews for COP30 week constitute their own imitation of junk mail. Previews, side events, receptions, roundtables, every hour has a new invitation. Attendance chatter has become its own subplot. It's all starting to resemble the Oscars awards craziness. Calmer folks might ignore the crowd-sized discourse and long-winded speeches and focus on the sustainable accounting for energy services. Born in 1898, the Sankey diagram takes its name from Captain Matthew Henry Phineas Ryle Sankey, who used thick, proportionate bands to show how a steam engine turned coal into a modest trickle of useful work and a torrent of waste heat. Its spiritual ancestor is Charles Joseph Minard's 1869 flow map of Napoleon's Russian campaign, and engineers soon adopted the method for material and energy balances across factories and utilities. In the late 20th century, laboratories and agencies like Lawrence Livermore and the International Energy Agency made Sankeys the standard for national energy flow charts, a role they still play today as we trace resources from source to service with fresh attention to electricity and ambient heat. We've included a link for Sankey diagrams showing US energy consumption in our LinkedIn post announcing the pod. If you're listening but have never seen a Sankey, picture on the left the big block of inputs: coal, oil, gas, nuclear, renewables. These flow through pipes into conversion boxes and networks. Some goes to electricity, some go straight into boilers and engines. On the far right, a narrower stack called energy services. This is the work people really care about: warm rooms, cold food, light at night, motion on roads and rails, heat for steel and cement. The rest drifts off as rejected energy. That is the stuff we did not use: exhaust heat, friction idling, losses in generation and delivery. Most national energy Sankey diagrams express flows in quads, where one quad equals 1 quadrillion British thermal units of energy, roughly 293 terawatt hours. Got that? Okay, put in a more practical way, 1 quad of energy is enough to heat 39 million average US homes for a full year. The reason the Sankey chart matters during COP week is simple. Policy has a habit of chasing the left side of the diagram. The left looks large. It feels like the real economy. Barrels and tons and cubic meters. Primary energy becomes the headline number. Replace all that with clean energy and job done. That is the trap. The right side is the target. People own energy services. No one owns primary energy. Consumers buy hot showers and cold beer and quiet trains. The economy demands functions. The atmosphere reacts to emissions. The left side is a means to an end. Once you fix your gaze on services, a few truths line up. Electricity is high-quality energy. It does work with very little waste at the point of use. It turns motors that send most of the energy into motion. It feeds heat pumps that move 2 or 3 units of ambient heat for every unit consumed. Fuels are lower on that quality ladder when the task is low-temperature heat or rotation at a wheel. A gasoline car releases most of its energy as heat. A flame for space heating gives a room that is comfortable, although the flame had a temperature far above what the room asked for. The chart shows this. A long, thick input becomes a thin service line and a large cloud of rejected heat. Here are some quick numbers. An EV's electric motor typically delivers about 85 to 90% of battery energy as useful motion, leaving only 10 to 15% as waste energy. A typical gasoline internal combustion engine delivers about 20 to 30% of fuel energy as useful motion, with 70 to 80% appearing as waste energy. Here is another energy use adjustment many people also still miss. Heat pumps harvest ambient heat from air, water, or ground and deliver it as useful heat. This is not a minor curiosity for lab tours. The devices are in millions of homes and offices. They add a flow on the right that does not appear on the left. The grid electricity that drives them is on the left already. The ambient heat is not. That free arrow needs to join the services column. Once you add it, the services share is larger than you thought. Clean technology carries more of the real load than a primary energy pie chart implies. Let us walk the chart step by step so you can hold it in your head without a picture. Start at the far right with services. Imagine that stack as 3 tall piles. Mobility, heat, power for devices and industry that run on electricity directly. Now, trace each pile back to the left through the conversion steps. For mobility, a large part came from internal combustion engines. You can hear the waste in the exhaust note. Electric drive takes the same service and trims the waste. For space and water heating, a large part came from direct combustion in boilers. Heat pumps take the same service and add the ambient arrow, so the delivered heat rises even when the electrical input rises modestly. For devices and process loads, electrification often acts like a straight shot from left to right, with very modest loss at the point of use. Focus on mobility first. A gasoline engine sends a minority of its input to the wheels. The rest escapes as heat and losses. An electric motor sends most of its input to motion. The grid has generation and delivery losses, so this is not magic, although the overall chain still delivers more motion per unit of input. The Sankey narrates that shift. On the left, you see less primary energy once a fleet turns to electric drive. On the right, you see the same or greater services. The car still gets you across town, only the waste shrinks. That is why planning against services matters. You do not replace all the left side gallons with electrons on a one-to-one basis. You target the motion requirement and the residual losses in the future chain. Shift to buildings. A boiler or furnace burns fuel to make a room comfortable. The flame is several orders above the temperature you want. The result is a large loss. A heat pump uses electricity to move heat from cold air or ground into the room. The coefficient of performance is the ratio of heat delivered to electricity consumed. 2 is common across many seasons, and 3 is not rare in mild conditions with good design. The ambient contribution fills the gap. That contribution is a real service. It is not a trick. A listener who runs one at home knows exactly how it feels in January. The Sankey needs a new arrow that flows from the environment into the services stack. Once you draw it there, the right side grows without a matching rise on the left. Now listen to the language we use at COPs during a week like this. We say things like primary energy share. We say things like renewables remain a small slice of total consumption. We say things like the gap is too large, Those lines mix input metrics with output needs. A fire hose of primary energy tells you very little about comfort or mobility or productive heat. The diagram helps you keep your bearings. Energy services define the job. Primary energy is one of several ways to resource the job. Sharp decarbonisation works by raising services for a given input, by removing waste, and by cleaning up the remaining input. The picture is more varied when it comes to industry. Some tasks need high-temperature heat. Some tasks can shift to electric processes at moderate heat. Some tasks can use heat pumps in steps to push temperature to where it must be. In a steel mill, an electric arc furnace does a very different job from a blast furnace. In food and drink, a heat pump can carry much of the load for pasteurization and wash cycles. In chemicals, there is electricity for compressors and separation, and there is direct heat where only a flame used to live. The Sankey disciplines the conversation. Do not treat all heat as equal. Match the quality of energy to the service. A quad of energy that arrives as electricity does more useful things in many tasks than a quad that arrives as raw fuel. Once the match is right, the services bar rises relative to the input. Now add storage and networks to your mental map. The electricity system has line losses and round-trip losses for storage. These are real, and planners must carry them in the numbers. Still, they do not bring you back to the world of waste that engines and flames produce when you use them for tasks that do not need high exergy. A battery that cycles daily to smooth solar output loses a fraction on each round trip. An engine car loses most of every litre as heat. The orders of magnitude differ. The Sankey shows this. A modest extra input on the left for storage lines can keep large service flows on the right stable through cloudy hours. The services lens makes those choices feel less mysterious. We also need to clear up hydrogen, since it has a strong presence in COP30 side meetings this week. Hydrogen is a vector, not a primary source. It shines in tasks that resist direct electrification. Think long-haul ships that need high energy density with zero carbon emissions. Think industrial feedstocks that embed hydrogen in molecules. Think seasonal storage where other technologies struggle. When someone proposes hydrogen for passenger cars or room heating at scale, run the Sankey in your head. Start at the electrolyzer. Follow the compression or liquefaction. Follow the distribution. Follow the conversion back to heat or motion. The right side often shrinks relative to a direct path. That does not mean no role. It means a focused role where the service demands it. Now let us correct the chart explicitly. This is easy. Keep the left side input categories. Keep the conversion boxes. On the right, draw the services stack a little taller than the standard number. The difference equals the ambient heat influx captured by heat pumps. The electrical input that drove those heat pumps was already on the left. The ambient influx lived in the physical world around us and did not sit in any fuel ledger. It now belongs on the right because it delivered comfort as a service. The effect is small to moderate in national totals today, and it grows each year as buildings retrofit. That growth will not appear on primary energy shares, since we did not add a fuel. It will appear in the lived reality of households and firms. Lower bills at equal comfort. Lower emissions at equal comfort. Higher services per unit of input. Now think about how we talk about progress each year. If we chase primary energy, a shift to EVs and heat pumps can look like a slow crawl. The left side shrinks, which many charts interpret as a loss of contribution from clean sources. The right side tells a different story. Services hold or rise while emissions fall. That is the objective of the transition. We are not after a larger pie of inputs. We are after more useful outcomes at lower emissions. A corrected Sankey captures that logic without a slogan. There is a second lesson. Efficiency is not a side hustle. It is the central engine of scale for clean supply. Every point of waste trimmed on the right lowers the build-out requirement on the left. A city-wide retrofit program that lifts average heat pump performance and tightens envelopes can save a gigawatt-scale power plant worth of winter peak without a single new fuel contract. A fleet plan that accelerates urban delivery vans to electric trims, diesel demand, and reduces local air pollution. Think of efficiency as a new resource on the right, not a leftover on the left. Policy follows from this. Standards and incentives should target services, things like warm homes with stable heating bills, commuting that is cleaner and quicker, and productive heat that keeps industry competitive. Grants and tax credits should reward delivered outcomes and measured performance, not only nameplate capacity. Cities and regions should publish services-focused dashboards. That would help us measure the share of households that achieve steady indoor comfort across cold snaps with low emissions, and the share of urban trips that complete within a set time at zero tailpipe, even the share of industrial heat that arrives at the required temperature with verified low emissions. People can relate to that. Voters can engage with that. And more investors can underwrite that with confidence. A quick myth check before we go further. The idea that clean energy must replace every unit of fossil primary energy is wrong. Services are the target. The idea that a low share on a primary energy pie chart proves slow progress is wrong. That pie includes waste that will fade as the system electrifies. The idea that heat pumps only matter in mild climates is wrong. Cold climate units handle winter with strong performance when sized and installed well. The idea that air conditioning now needs a matching ambient arrow in a chart is also wrong. Cooling removes ambient heat that entered the building. There is a communication test here for everyone in Belém this week. Next time someone says renewables still provide a small share of total energy, ask which total they mean. If they mean primary energy, that is an input pool that includes a huge waste stream from engines and flames. If they mean services, the share looks very different in sectors that electrify well. If they mean emissions, that is a different scoreboard again. Try to keep those scoreboards separate in your mind and in your slides. It avoids confusion and it keeps the discussion honest and constructive. Let us turn to finance since many of our listeners wear this hat. Planning driven by energy services changes how you size investments. A grid that supports many heat pumps and EVs needs capacity and flexibility at specific hours rather than sheer annual energy. This means targeting winter mornings and summer evenings, along with distribution upgrades in districts that retrofit fastest. Stack this together with storage duration to match the shape of the new load. Portfolio strategy then aims at service reliability metrics and avoided fuel risk. Lenders prefer that because the cash flows link to outcomes that customers feel every day. In industry, energy service-based planning pushes capital to the line where exergy matches need. That line allocates scarce molecules to users that value them the most, and it leaves electrons to power tasks where they shine. We can even apply this to national planning without big new agencies. A transport ministry that tracks services can set zero emission targets by kilometres and passengers and freight rather than litres. A buildings ministry can set targets by square metres, upgraded to a comfort standard. A power ministry can publish a services adequacy outlook that aligns with those targets. The methods exist. The missing piece is often mental. We grew up thinking energy equals fuels. The present asks us to think energy equals services. Once you feel that shift, the rest of the strategy starts to fall into place. Now, a quick scene to close the loop with Belém. Imagine a side event room with a projector and a Sankey on the screen. The presenter points to the left and says, "A large share still comes from fossil sources." You sit there and quietly rotate the picture in your mind. You can see the services column on the right, a little taller than the slide shows once ambient heat is added. You now know the mobility bar is carried more and more by electric drive. You also understand the industrial bar should be peeled into layers by temperature. Suddenly, an energy policy menu emerges that grows that right side while the left side cleans and shrinks. The room asks a question about attendance. You smile and move the discussion back to the diagram, secure in the knowledge that real progress is a better ledger. Take this with you as the COP30 week unfolds. When you read a claim that clean energy can never scale to replace today's energy, ask which energy. Energy services are the metric, not primary energy. We all need to wake up to this key fact. But somehow, it doesn't seem like Belém is a meeting intended to shine a light on such a fundamental point for understanding the real progress and potential of sustainable energy. When you see a graph that says renewables still supply only a small slice of total energy, ask whether that total includes the waste you plan to retire. When someone claims heat pumps cannot carry real winters, ask for the service numbers. How many hours of steady comfort did they deliver in that region, at what cost and with what emissions? Reality lives in the services. We would like to conclude this pod with our best efforts to provide the information we promised you, which means we've crunched the numbers, and our best estimate is that sustainable energy, using the broadest definition of including nuclear and ambient heat delivered by heat pumps, made up 17.4% of energy service needs for the US back in 2023. That's not a figure you'll hear in Belém this week, nor elsewhere. And we're happy to explain our work and discuss with any listeners who want to understand our methodology. But it's a very important contribution to overall energy needs, one that is also growing exponentially at ever-falling production prices. It's a baseline for NetZero success and provides the proof that a sustainable future is already knocking on the door. We set out to fix the ledger, and we did. You can now read a Sankey without getting trapped by primary energy shares. You can add the ambient heat arrow in your head for heat pumps. You can compare pathways by the services they deliver, not by the fuel tonnage they consume. Now let's try explaining to a neighbour why an EV reduces waste in motion, or why a heat pump delivers more comfort for the same or lower bill. You can also be more informed when it comes to the debate in Belém. You're prepared with us to cut through the political noise, not to mention recurring failure to live up to financial promises that now mount up to the trillions of dollars. It's as easy as keeping your eye on the right side of the Sankey. Well, that's a wrap on episode 46 of the GreenWave podcast. We appreciate you sharing your time. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeart, Podchaser, Boomplay, and Player FM. Sharing the GreenWave with friends is caring. So is leaving a 5-star review. If you have missed any of our LinkedIn posts or the GreenWave Gazette, you can always catch us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, or visit synergy-international.net. We'll keep reflecting on the trends shaping sustainable finance and global policy. Until next time, keep riding the green wave of sustainability.